The car I'm driving was built in 1939. Driving a classic car, always special, and is also a significant player in the history of a very legendary car brand, a brand that has a legacy spanning over 100 years. Well, that, my friends, is extra special. Citroen is a brand that we know a little bit better now, but we don't really know its complete story. Yes, it's French, but how did it all begin? Who was André Citroën and why did he found the car company all the way back in 1919? To get you that story, I have traveled many miles to take you inside Citroën. The story begins in France, naturally, and I'm at the company's famed conservatoire or conservatory, where it houses its historic collection of automobiles, from the very first to present day. It's been carefully curated, maintained, and yes, most of the cars that you see here are still drivable and are routinely taken out. Denis Weil, Citroën's heritage manager, is the person responsible for curating and caring for these gorgeous vintage and more recent machines. Now, there have been many famous Citroëns over the years, but the one that immediately comes to mind is this. 2CV is easily one of the most recognized cars on the planet, has been for decades, and it's a car that sold in huge volume for Citroën. It really established the brand, made it a global sort of a name for the first time, and it's a car that got produced in many different countries, got sold in many countries, and even though the first one was made way back in 1948, the most recent one, if I can call it that, was made right up to the early 90s. Yes, this is a legend. Its durability, reliability, and iconic shape are just some of the reasons it is an absolute automotive Hall of Famer. Now, in French, it's called the chevaux, and while that literally translates to 2 horses, the designation comes from a tax horsepower, a horsepower-related tax in the French vehicle tax system of the day. This was based on factors like engine size, gear ratio, and tire size, not the actual horsepower output. Pretty much like our sub-4 meter rule today, isn't it?
Difficult to do a 2CV today because the world is different. But we can, and you will ask the same question to Pierre Leclerc, the design chef of Citroën, because you will see they have a 2CV in the design center from here always, because it's a good thinking for the future. Something simple, something light, something for every day. At the moment, it's not the same nowadays, but at the moment it was easy to repair yourself also, because it was simple. In fact, like the new concept only, less parts, less things, and something essential for what you need every day, not always big, as you said, a big screen and things like that. So something more simple. I think it is the way we had to take some ideas from the 2CV for the cars of nowadays and tomorrow.
So the best person to go to next was in fact Pierre Leclerc. Let's say the last 3 or 4 years have also been a time of big change at Citroën. It's not a inward European looking brand. It's not niche. It's more global. It has more it has greater ambitions and aspirations. That also puts another layer to that story where, maybe the requirements from what design needs to bring become more expansive, become much wider. Also exciting then for you.
Also super exciting because we're really coming out of our comfort zone. We try to understand markets like India that are...
I got myself a 1948 model. It's the real deal. Well, almost.
very famous car, in fact, because it's the one that featured in the 1981 James Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only. The car was prominently featured in the film's poster, and it took part in an epic chase scene where it keeps going despite being shot at, taking some somersaults and being bashed down a hillside. So, not quite as adventurous, but still getting to drive that same simple mechanical car with guts and glory attached to it, well, it doesn't get better.
Sorry, Gen Z. No Apple CarPlay, no wireless charger. Oh mon Dieu! Am I tripping on this or what? Oui, monsieur. C'est si bon.
So, a real treat to be able to drive heritage and not simply look at it. But the story goes back several decades before the 2CV. And like many celebrated car makers, this over 100-year legacy didn't begin with producing cars. André Citroën formed a company in 1914 to produce munitions during World War I. He built the Quai de Javel factory in Paris to produce them. It was only after the war that he converted the factory to automobile production in 1919. The first car that rolled out just 4 months after World War I ended was the Type A. What followed was a lot of innovation and some experimentation too. André Citroën believed that the product came first, and he was not necessarily a great businessman. Yet, the Citroën marque became the world's fourth largest car maker by the 1930s. It famously used the Eiffel Tower to display its brand name for a decade, starting 1925, and it held the Guinness record for being the world's largest advertising sign.
So unlike every other car maker where you'd see them putting their logo either at the top of the grille or as a hood ornament, which is pretty much what Citroën had been doing up to that point, André Citroën decided to put the double chevron as a major part of the grille. So as you saw the car coming up, you spotted that logo and you recognized it right away as being something different. The first car to get it was in the early 30s, the Rosalie.
The Citroën logo, featuring the chevrons, is derived from a double helical gear or herringbone pattern. This design element represents the company's mechanical engineering roots, a departure from logos that draw inspiration from nature, fantasy, or other symbolic imagery. The double helical gear is a combination of two helical gears, one with a left-hand helix and the other with a right hand, which can also be referred to as herringbone gears, something that was developed by Citroën. Despite his failing health, Citroën persevered and produced his masterpiece, the Traction Avant, the world's first mass-produced monocoque front-wheel drive car. And yeah, I simply had to drive it.
The pure mechanical feel and joy that a car like this brings you. The sights, the sounds, the feels, and the smell. Oh, it's absolute automotive heaven. You know, petrol heads usually like to talk about speed and performance, but a true petrol head will savor this even more. Now, given how old this car is, I have to tell you, the steering, the turning radius, the ride quality and comfort feel, the suspension, it's pretty remarkable. And if that don't impress you much, well, I can tell you, it even came with optional equipment. You saw the yellow wheels on the outside, right? Well, you could also get them in green or red.
But before the car could become a hit, which it eventually did, Citroën fell into bankruptcy. It was rescued by its tire supplier, Michelin, and soon after, André Citroën passed away. The Traction Avant was one of the earliest cars to subsequently add the use of rack and pinion steering construction, which added to its maneuverability. As I said, the car went on to become a massive bestseller. The Traction Avant, the 2CV, and the DS model line are all cars that show how technological advancement and innovation mattered most to the brand. With experimentation came ideas, and with ideas, advancement. The successor to the Traction Avant was that DS model line, massively appreciated for its performance, but almost more so for its groundbreaking design. This car remains a design icon even today. And back in 1955, this was the first production car with disc brakes. Until then, the preserve of motorsport use only.
In 55, the car was very classical. Even I would say the traction avant was, of course, in 34 was very in advance. But we're in 55, the other car was quite simple. And with the DS, another time we show the way to go and to have more comfortable, but also more, I would say, security car with active security and passive security, because the car on the road was very efficient, even in bad condition, and especially with the Michelin tires, which were made specially for the DS. On wet condition, the car was one of the best on the road.
In the 1970s, the French car industry suffered job losses and drops in profitability. The country's government facilitated the merger of Citroën with Peugeot, ending Michelin's ownership and creating the PSA Peugeot Citroën era. But the research and development didn't stop there. Year after year, Citroën brought in concepts that made waves in the industry, even though some never got the green light to go into production.
A Citroen tractor. Did you know that was a thing? Well, it wasn't really a thing. The company tried to get into this sort of different range of products, the agricultural sector, but this was right after the Second World War. The French government at the time said, why don't you just focus on making cars? We need that right now. And so that project never took off. But that's the special thing about the Conservatoire, because you come here and you see these one-off experimental vehicles. You also get to see China-specific models, or the DS brand when it was launched. That's quite a recent addition. And then you also see this. I mean, I bet you did not know about this. If you thought the tractor was a surprise, how about a Citroen helicopter? Well, the idea was quite simple, that, around the 70s and 80s, people had this idea that by the year 2000, maybe we'll have flying cars. And so the initial experiment towards that, or trying to take baby steps towards a project like that, Citroën thought it should get into developing its own helicopter and just try and figure out whether flying cars could be a potential future. They just made a few of them. There was some testing carried out, but again, it was something that just wasn't meant to be. Now, you might think that that's a sports car concept. It does have a little bit of a hint of the DS in its stance, but this is the 1988 Citroën Activa concept car. Not a sports car. The idea was to try and showcase how you can have hydraulics and electronics working hand in hand to once again maximize comfort while still looking pretty sexy. Now, I have to tell you that a lot of concept cars from Citroën were cars that many of us used to look forward to. Why? Because they were sometimes outlandish. They were sometimes a little bit almost over-optimistic in what they were trying to offer, but most of them would make it to production. And there's one in particular I know you will recognize. Come take a look. Quite a beast, isn't it? And of course, you know it. That is the Aircross concept from the 2015 Shanghai Auto Show, the car that went on to become the C5 Aircross.
The Citroën brand has endured. Today, PSA stands as a part of Stellantis, having merged in 2021 with Fiat Chrysler. Stellantis is now the fourth largest car maker on the planet, a familiar hark back to Citroën's own status almost 100 years ago. And the innovations continue. So do the outlandish concepts. The brand keeps pushing boundaries and has recently returned to its historic logo after decades of seeing just the double chevron being a part of the front grille, an homage to its founding. The concept to really showcase all of this was the quirky and cool Ollie that debuted at the end of 2022. Speaking of the Ollie, I have a lot to say on it. Why? Well, I got to drive it, but you'll have to wait for that video to drop. Meanwhile, Tell me how you liked this journey inside Citroen's past in the comments section below.